Giva Cordia. Hello, everyone. Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. And this is Fireside Chat 121. And as is customary, I will start with a prayer for peace. Gomara Shiocon ar fud na crinne. Gomara Shiocon in our Jiley agus in our Jirha. Gonairi Lin in our Cuj Garmaga. Galmij Buikas Jiv, Jea Chuftaga is Spirit Chuftaga. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities, for peace. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. That those who make riches from violence and war might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the Holy Mountain, with thanks to John O'Donoghue. So let's see where you're from. So West Yorkshire. Oh, on a dark night. Yes, I'm noticing I need more lights tonight. It's coming, the darkness, the dark time of the year. Wyoming, Scotland, South Wales, wonderful, West Cornwall, Penzance. Where else are people coming from? London. Hi, Ferdiad. Thank you. Washington, lovely. Berkshire. Belgium, lovely. Holland, Portugal, New York, Hertfordshire, Richmond, Virginia, Indiana, New Orleans, Gloucester, Taiwan, okay, Plattsburgh, Cork, Missouri, Northamptonshire, Paris, Ulster, dark Sweden, bless you. Yes, I find myself, this is always a hard time of the year, September. I've loved the brightness of summer. And once I pass the equinox, then I accept. And then I go whittling into the dark time of the year. And then I love the dark. It's always that transition from light to dark is hard for me. Edmonton, Alberta. So you're all, great to see you all here. And Wigan as another person. And so this evening we go to Coventry to meet my guest. A big treat for you today. This is Barry Patterson. Barry, you are so welcome.
Thank you very much, Emma. What a lovely prayer. And hello.
Thank you. And so you're from Coventry, and just because I started for peace, and we get on to the rest of your life after this. Howard and I, when we would go to a conference in Warwickshire, have time to kill before we went there, fly to Birmingham and get the bus to Coventry and visit the old cathedral there, which is now, what is it? A Garden of Peace, because it was bombed by the Germans in revenge for the British bombing on Dresden, and how it's been a place of peace and reconciliation. And you mentioned earlier you have a friend who is a peace poet. So could you talk a little bit about that, given that we started off with a prayer for peace?
Well, of course, World War II is still in living memory. And so you can talk to all the people who remember that terrible night. Lots of people died. The city centre was an inferno. It was, and there's all kinds of folklore surrounding it. And some of it better known than others. Let's not go into all of that, though. And then, of course, the rebuilding. So, in fact, our shopping mall, if you walk down into the shopping precinct in Coventry, which you might have done when you visited, and say our shopping malls, it was one of the first pedestrian shopping malls in Europe. Ooh. He was a radical architect. They thought brutalism was wonderful. And then, of course, you go up a slight hill and you come to the cathedral. the old cathedral, as you said, was a burned out shell. And the new cathedral, of course, with all kinds of amazing art in and around it. And Coventry, very much, a city of peace and reconciliation. My friend Anthony Owen is a local poet I've known a long time, and he is someone who has worked tirelessly for many, many years now, building strong artistic connections, bardic connections between our city and other cities. So we have the Coventry is town twinned with Cork in Ireland, and we have the Coventry-Cork Poetry Exchange. So poets from Coventry visit Cork, the Corkadians put them up and arrange gigs for them, and vice versa. The poets from Cork always come over here around about Samhain time, actually, so they'll be coming soon, I imagine. I went into Tony and I both went together as poetry ambassadors in 2010. What a fantastic city Cork is! And then our friends, they come from Cork to Coventry, and we do that. And then also the town is also twinned with Dresden, and there's a lot of Coventry-Dresden connection. Both cities committed to going beyond the horror of war and the traumatic memory that it leaves in the people and the land. And so, there are a lot of cultural links of that kind too. And in fact, my friend so check him out. That's Anthony Owen, people. He's the only person whose poetry about nuclear war has been translated into Japanese and put on display in Hiroshima. Ooh. In the museum in museum in Hiroshima. He's quite a remarkable person.
I've just put him on
Coventry. Yeah. Coventry's an interesting place though, Eimear. Why is Coventry here? We don't have a great big river. We're not on top of a great big hill. Why is Coventry here? And the answer is something that will interest Druid friends, because we have springs and wells.
It's not just some place you get sent to.
Huh?
It's not just some place you get sent to.
Well, of course, there's an awful lot of history. It was the capital at one point. Of course, the king was in Coventry, and it was the capital of England at one point in some war or other. And then it was used as a prison too. But anyway, we have springs and wells. We have a very, very powerful artesian springs and wells. A history of the dyeing industry. And in medieval times, much of what's now central Coventry was wetland. And there's evidence to suggest one or two bent bronze pins. Ooh. One or two bent bronze pins to suggest, that maybe some kind of activity, some kind of human activity went on there in ancient times. The cathedral is on the site of the previous medieval priory, and that is on the site of what's now a very slight hill. But if you look underneath the urban imposition over the land, you can imagine that when the lower area and the little, very small river Sherborne and the lower area was more kind of wetlandy, that it might almost have been a small island. And so, as a Druid living in a city, I think that I shouldn't just be rushing out to the countryside and going, although I love doing that, but I should know my land. I should walk out my own door. Mm-hmm. I should walk out my own front door and know the land I'm on. And I can go in one direction and be in the green. I can go in the other direction and be in the grey. Why not?
Yes. Nimi says, my mum worked with a Coventry native serving in World War II. And when he got off the train on leave, he didn't know how to get home. It was completely unrecognisable. Mm-hmm. I'm just thinking, what a shock that must be for people to come home. And now I'm... With the earthquake in Morocco, I was at the World Storytelling Festival in Marrakesh in February, and some of the places where I was have been damaged. And you look at what was once a building is now a pile of rubble. What impact that must have on people.
Yeah, well, you can look at the photos of the destruction of our city, and also by a strange coincidence, the king was actually staying somewhere quite nearby. And so the next morning, the king was actually went walk around in the smoking, smouldering ruins from which they were still recovering bodies. And there's some very dramatic footage of all those terrible events, and the follow up. Yeah. But then I think it's important. I think it's important though to kind of to recognize that cities have a presence and a power, a lot of stories and a lot of magic in them.
Absolutely, and to tap into that, to be able to do that and see that magic in your city, it's very easy. I mean, I live in a rural area, so I'm very, very lucky. But to be able to find that magic and feel the power, because cities or towns were created because there was something there. Okay, you could say practically because there's a river or a spring, but there's magic in that.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. In fact, we have some wells. We have we have one or two old capped wells in the area where I live. And then also not far from where I live, there's a place called Mount Nod.
Oh.
And we I'm assured by a sympathetic local historian that Mount Nod might well be a reference to Nodens, who is a very popular Romano-British god, often associated with waterways. Thinking of the famous Temple of Lydney near Bristol, which was dedicated to Nodens. And so I kind of think that he's one of the ancient deities who presides over our city. And then, of course, if you read a bit about your Roman Britain, you know that Coventina was a goddess of the waters who had a shrine by the Roman wall. So is that complete coincidence? We will probably never know.
Yeah.
Really? We'll probably never know. There are lots of ideas about the origin of the name of my city, and we'll probably never know the answer.
Oh.
Interesting
Go on.
Interesting heritage round here. I have the great honour of being involved in what is possibly the oldest continuously recorded ceremony in Britain, which, strange as it may seem, is an Anglo-Saxon taxation ceremony called Wroth Silver. And it's coming up soon. Before dawn on November the 11th, we all meet at Nightlow Cross. But Nightlow Cross isn't a cross. It's a stone with a hole in it, which used to be the cross base. Okay. It's very close to the A45 going south out of Coventry. In a very small field, there's a little mound. They say it's an old tumulus. We don't know. But they had a cross in it, and it's one of the local meeting places. Before dawn on November the 11th, a load of people all meet up, and then they read an old charter, the lists of all the local different villages and communities. And when that village is named, someone from each little village comes and they throw some little money in the hole and shout, "Wroth Silver." And what it is, essentially, it looks to me like it's an Anglo-Saxon protection racket. But then after that, we all go to the pub and have a big breakfast and toast the monarch with rum and hot milk. And we all get given have I got one handy? We all get given a big church warden pipe. Oh, I've got hundreds of the bloody things and I can't find one. Never mind.
You mean the pipe that you smoke?
Yeah, everyone gets a big clear pipe. It's part of the ritual. And I'm the poet laureate, so then they have a speech from the mayor of Rugby, and various people give their speeches, and then every year I write a poem for the occasion. So I could read you one if you like. Please
do. It's a nice start for our chat.
This is the first. This is the first Wroth Silver poem I wrote about 10 years or so ago, but I think it's a good one if you're introducing people to the event. Oh, by the way, in the Doomsday Book, it says that this is an old English custom. So it could be 1,000 years or more old. And then, when it was no longer mandatory, they missed it. They missed meeting up before dawn in the winter and going to the pub, right? Round about Samhain, November the 11th, calendars.
Yes,
right?
Yes.
They missed it, and so they just kept it going. Volunteers have kept it going. And in fact, one of the volunteers, David Eden, who has now attended Wroth Silver more than 80 times.
Go away. Wow.
Yeah. Anyway, this poem is entitled Martinmas. Oncoming winter's journey must be taken by foot, horse, carriage, ox-pulled cart, to stand before dawn at the things dead, earth home of the old bony man, cross of Nightlow, weathered holy stone, waymarker of miles and years, fast fading. Wind and rain, sleet and snow, fast frosts fall sharp towards the end of night, to make the journey out of the warm inn, farm, kitchen, lodge house, stable yard, a cold and weary way that you must take to meet your obligation. Down the foss from Hopsford, up the foss from Princethorpe and Stretton and Harbury with their legendary 2 shillings and 3pence halfpenny. Armies marched here, time long ago, and even before, when it was a green way on a stony ridge, the cattle drover sought his ancient north. Down Stretton Lane from Woolston, up London Road from Toft and Woolscott, up the old Cove Road from Ladbroke and Long Itchington, all the way over from Arley and Astley, Bramscote and Churchover, Bovenhall, Birdingbury and Weston under Weatherly, a wild road for company, staff and sword. A wild road, a dark way, a passage herdsmen follow, seeking pasture or market days in squares. So you must follow too, marking signs to pay your wrath, your troth, your worth. White silver protection money to land earls. The wild ox shuns company. She'll charge the noble lord blood. A single-minded fighter, she'll redden herself if she can. Veins roar the tune, hard to lead, head tosser, earth stamper, voice wind, heard over centuries. And now we come, out of villages, suburbs and cities, by shiny car, shiny hood pulled up, fortified by coffee, toast, porridge, milky tea, to stand where they stood, fulfill a different kind of duty. Why do we come? To this once central, now almost forgotten field, to stand in rain around a stone cross long gone. We owe no dues to any landed lord, come and go as we please, unafraid of any wild forest denizen. Our oath and troth and worth held by the bosses and banks, our cattle shipped by red-lit lorries, modern roarers dodged by the side of the A45, as we filter past the abandoned garage, the ruined restaurant, somnolent driveways, converted cottages. We come in part to honour those who came before, to stand where they stood and remember them. We're an ancient people, standing the test of time, and they're our forebears, village elders, farmers, drovers, people of the land who walked this road before us. For some of us, it's in the blood. We're Nightlow 100 born and bred. We came here with our mum and dad when we were little, a special tea, taste of rum and hot milk when you're 10, an adventure, story to tell other children. Many of us are drawn by gravity, the heavy-weight years of folk, our own lives drawn into the loom of local culture, the spirit of the place, the gathered gloom of season. Tradition locates us in a deeper, wider world. So we take the winter journey across the land to the gathering place, stand before dawn to hear the ancient names called out, while in the shadows of the oncoming day we join a greater company and ourselves become the ancestors of tomorrow.
Wow, that is just putting great poetry, very powerful, like a trumpet fanfare. You mentioned Martinmas, and that's it. I mean, we know it here as St. Martin's Day, and I'm interested in why that was the day. What was the significance for the Anglo-Saxons? Because I'll just say something. In Ireland, on St. Martin's Day, there was the tradition where a goose would be slaughtered, and the blood of the goose would be daubed on the doors of the houses and the outbuildings for protection, which in my view is very much a pre-Christian, but now became a Christian ritual on the 11th of November. And I wonder, what is the connection with the Anglo-Saxons and St. Martin?
Well, actually, I think St. Martin, like a lot of things, has been stitched onto Samhain.
Okay.
And just because they're Anglo-Saxon and not Celts, in inverted commas, doesn't mean to say they didn't mark that very special and liminal time. Particularly since Saxon settlers probably absorbed some of the local British culture when they came here. And as for November the 11th, Remembrance Day, right? Remembering the dead.
Okay.
I think that we're just looking at calendrical adjustments.
Okay.
And then my understanding is, probably from reading Ronald Hutton's Stations of the Sun, but my understanding is that when you have, at least in pre-English culture, and what you might call native or Celtic culture, Beltane and Samhain, because they're these two liminal times, the cycle of winter and summer, because that liminal position, they are times when you renew contracts.
Okay.
When you make and renew contracts, such as hand fastings. And then you can say that's why in Britain, we do our tax returns in early April, right? Even though early April is not Samhain, it's close enough, right? It's close enough to have become adjusted out of the original festival context. And so many things we do in the modern world have these ancient roots.
And ours is
hard to dig out.
Our tax returns at the end of October.
Well, there you go. Same principle.
And in a lot of our mythologies, the stories occur at either Bealtaine or Samhain. Well, obviously there's Lunasa, but mostly Bealtaine and Samhain, because that's when people gathered at Tara, or people gathered at Ishnok, and the fires were turned, extinguished and then relit. So those are the two times. Absolutely. It's fascinating. Brilliant. Wow. Yeah.
Interestingly, in the poem, this might interest you. In the poem, I refer to an ox or a bull. If you can't pay your wrath money, you have to pay a huge fine, or provide the Lord with a cow, a white cow that has a red nose or red ears.
Okay.
Now, do you recognise that?
Yes, I do, from the imagery. Absolutely, yes.
Yes. So this is something which is actually still celebrated. And in fact, when they sit at the high table in the pub for the big breakfast, they've actually had made a big model of a wild cow with a red nose and red ears. Very much like a Chillingham cow, like even, and like you said, like the otherworldly animals, the otherworldly cow has a red nose. So it's almost like they're actually saying, if you don't pay, you have to pay a big fine, or you have to provide us with an animal you're never actually going to be able to catch. Yeah? One of those impossible one of those things which is impossible to fulfill, because the unseen people might not be too happy if you nip over there and start nicking their cows.
No, absolutely not. Yes, yeah. Brilliant. Yeah. Oh, it's wonderful. It's great reactions to your poetry. So your poem, what a poem! Just truly powerful. It's just, thank you very much for this recital, and you're going to get more, Timey. People love the idea we're the ancestors of tomorrow. What a powerful closing line. Whew. That's a great story of that time. It doesn't matter. It's a good nicking. You know what? It's good stealing things or borrowing things or, that was tremendous. Evocative of strength in a way I haven't experienced in poetry before, only in songs. Thank you. Philosophical, you haven't heard Barry before. He is incredibly one of the most powerful performance poets I know. So he certainly embodies his poetry and fills the space with his word wizardry when you can hear him live. And Devon says, wonderful poem. Thank you for taking us on an adventure with you. Fantastic. Thank you, Barry. We became the ancestors. That's from Nimi. Wonderful. Brilliant. And Gunter Nahl, Gunter is was German but living in Switzerland. And now, Barry, translation in German, please. Oh, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. And Pat Booker says he was brilliant at the summer gathering in 2022. He's been brilliant at many summer gatherings and winter ones. And Ferdiad, you know Ferdiad McGowan, do you?
I don't know. I might do. I might well do. I meet loads of people and I'm not very good remembering their names. Sorry, everybody.
What could possibly go wrong with a cattle raid to the other world?
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. Yes. What could possibly go wrong? My lord, I have a cunning plan. We could get off paying our Wroth Silver money if we go to Fairyland and steal one of their cows.
Easy peasy. Well, we've got a message from Lapland, and it's not Santa. Francis says, "Thank you, Barry. As you were reciting those words, the Aurora Borealis were dancing in the sky here in Lapland."
That's great.
Isn't that just wonderful? And I was in on Orkney it was Samhain last year at the Orkney Storytelling Festival. And it was at 9 o'clock and we were in an old schoolhouse listening to poetry. And all the locals, someone had gone out for a break, took photographs of the Northern Lights. I came back in and never told us because they're so used to it. It wasn't until the next day. "Oh, yeah, we took some photographs." I said, "I could have gone out and seen them." I said, "Oh, yeah." So just lovely to see such magic. And to have it for Francis to witness the aurora while you're reciting.
A photographer that I follow, a Northumberland photographer that I follow on Facebook, last night or early this morning, took an absolutely fantastic photograph of the Aurora Borealis over Dunstanburgh Castle on the Northumberland coast just last night. A really good photo. Stunning thing to see. Because that's where I come from. I come from the northeast. I live in Coventry now, but I come from the northeast.
Okay. So tell us, what brought you to Druidry and what brought you to Obod? How did you find Druidry and Obod?
Well, I was part of the great pagan renaissance of the late 80s. Prior to that, I'm also a Dharma practitioner. Prior to that, I was mostly a Dharma practitioner, but I always had a pagan sensibility. And back then there wasn't, but these days we live in a golden age of books and texts, translations, interpretations, practical exercises and wonderful courses. But even then there was nothing like that. But then there was a great pagan renaissance in the late 80s. I was part of what's called Pagan Link.
Okay. And
Pagan Link was a network. It put a whole load of pagans who'd never met another pagan ever before in touch with one another. And then we all have one another's phone numbers sent to us by a clearinghouse. We'd call one another up and we'd all meet up in the pub, go, "Wow, hello, nice to meet you," and then do things. And we became a self-organizing kind of scene. Where I was in South London, we had a very vibrant and self-organizing scheme. And then Pagan Link started organizing camps and larger gatherings.
Okay.
That's how I met Anne.
Okay.
At such an event. And then that's how I met Arthur and Penny Billington.
Oh, lovely.
And then we became friends over the years. We stayed in contact and became friends over the years. And then, must have been around about the year 2000, 2001, perhaps. They invited me to speak at a gathering they were an Obod gathering they were having in Leicestershire, because of some work that I've done about the spirit of the place, and also working with using geology to interpreting landscape in a very modern or scientific kind of way, but using that knowledge we have of the landscape to find power places and to work with the spirit of the land in harmony with the spirit of the land by having some geological idea of what's going on. And so they invited me to speak, and then we were at this lovely little weekend event, and it was so warm and welcoming, and we had a lovely time, and the final ritual was beautiful. And Anne and I went home and said, "Wow, is that what Druids do? That was fantastic." It was quite different from what we'd been doing. Anne and I had been running Coventry Earth Spirit for years, which is a very non-denominational pagan group, mostly a social group, who did the occasional ritual. But we were getting jaded. So we had given up our leadership of the group and said, if you're a group, be a group. We're not your mum and dad. Because we never had any idea that we were leading the group particularly, or that we were teaching, or that we were high priests or priestesses or anything like that. We always refused. Well, I always refused those sorts of titles. I don't like titles.
Mm-hmm.
And so we'd become a bit jaded, so we kind of left them to get on with their thing. And then also the non-denominational pagan world was becoming increasingly, at that time, increasingly new agey.
Okay.
And we were like, more past life regression with a crystal, more angel cards, and positive thinking.
Yeah.
And then so Obod was a breath of fresh air. And then some of the people we met at that invited us to go through what was then Obod camps, which is now, of course, White Horse camps, but was then Obod camps. And we went to our first Obod camp and just kind of said, wow, this is great. These people are fantastic. Let's join their order. So we did.
Brilliant.
Although I've never really followed the course and I've never really had a mentor, I'm not really that interested in courses and credentials and titles. And so I suppose I'm a perennial bard.
Yeah.
But I've done quite a lot of stuff over the years, and I'm honoured that, friends and co-workers in Obod have often given me some nice meaty bits of responsibility in some of our work together.
Because you can rise to it, you hold the responsibility, you're able to do it. And of course, it doesn't matter what grade you're on. Well, certainly on this side of the world, we never ask. I'm not interested. I'm not concerned. And it's about, you are a bard, whether you finish the grade or not isn't the issue. You're actually walking, practicing. And, whether you like it or not, you have leadership skills, whether you want to be, so it's like when you're asked to do things, you're asked because you can do it,
I think ritual design by committee is one of the circles of hell that Dante never was too scared to visit. Right? And so when they all start having their ritual design by committee, their ritual dreaming and all of that, I just say, my skills, get a job, bye.
Yeah. Pat says, I remember that New Age period. At one point, our pagan group was organising outings to watch The Secret. That book, or it must be a film made in the book. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and ghost hunting. They were all going ghost hunting.
Oh, brilliant. So you're, I was never at an Obod camp because it always clashed, and I still haven't been to a White Horse camp. So are you involved in the White Horse camps now?
Not as much as I was. At one point, I was events coordinator. I've been going to camp for many years, but I haven't now been since before COVID. The last camp I attended was in bulk 2020.
Okay,
and then COVID happened, and then since then they have had some camps, but I just haven't been able to get to any of them. So I've got my fingers crossed. I'm going to get to Samhain camp at Wildways this Samhain. They're opening the bookings very soon, possibly tonight.
And your fingers crossed. Are the numbers limited?
Yeah, the numbers are limited. Yeah, Wildways has got a certain capacity.
Oh, okay. So
Wildways is Elaine and Garth's land in Shropshire, of course. They've got ancient woodland, they've got barn, they've got big yurt, they've got a roundhouse in the woods, they've got a stream, they've got a sauna, and a kitchen. It's really, for a winter camp like Samhain, it's nice to have places you can shelter.
Ricky says, had the pleasure of your company on Anderida camp back in the day.
Yay, Ricky! Great to see you, and at some of the gatherings in Glastonbury too, Ricky. Yeah, Anderida. Yeah, that was a fun weekend. A bit far for me to go though.
Yes, it's the
other side of the M25.
That's right. So, when you think of your Awen, how do you get it, or where does it come from, or do you sit in front of a blank page or a blank screen? Or are you out walking in the woods or your landscape? Where does the inspiration come for your, because you've got music, you've got poetry, you've got all sorts of things. So where does it come from?
Well, I think it is an innate and infinite potential of my own deepest nature.
Okay.
So therefore, the task for me isn't to do one thing, like sit in front of a piece of paper or go for a walk, but rather to kind of be aware in this moment, and to kind of get the feeling of what the right thing to do is. Yeah. So, like, for instance, Barry's definition of magic helps with this. You know how Crowley and Dio and Fortune made that famous definition everyone chats about these days, and creating change and conformity with will and all that. Well, I don't go with that. I say that, and I don't go with it being a science. I say magic is the art of arranging your circumstances so that incredible, extraordinary things can happen.
Beautiful.
And so Awen is, you can see how that relates to finding your Awen. But it means, though, that because it's art and not magic, you can't repeat not art and not science. You can't repeat the experiment. So what worked one day might not work the next day. Right. One day I might put my headphones on and listen to Tangerine Dream very loud, drinking coffee. But I don't know what's going to happen. I remember when I had an interview with Dave earlier this year on Druidcast, and I remember at one point I was saying, but I will reiterate, I don't believe in writer's block. If you're not writing, it's just because you're not writing. Okay, do something else. And if you're a kind of writer who thinks you must or should write, and I know some writers do have that narrative, that thing going on. Well, okay, but I don't. And so then Awen comes where it wants. It's like the weather, how it wants to arise, it'll arise. But I can go with the flow. I can go with the intuition. I'm fortunate in that I have a lot of personal freedom these days to do my spiritual practice.
Okay.
To place myself indoors or outdoors, to play a bit of music, to listen to some music. I think music's very important. And I think, wrong pair of trousers, and the very small notebook.
Ah, yes.
How many great ideas? And the great idea might be one word. I might be listening to Nick Cave in the car, and Nick Cave sings, Sirius is 6 light years away, Arcturus is 37. And I think, wow, every night I look at Arcturus and it's 37 light years away. That's interesting. That's the kind of thing that I would write in my little book.
Okay.
Right? And then that might not be the subject matter of a poem, but it might be a good line to stick in somewhere.
Yeah, brilliant.
And so my process is kind of organic. And we have to, I think that it's a delicate balancing act. And also I think it requires commitment, but not commitment to the product. So it's like saying that magic is about creating change and conformity with will, and then forgetting what wicked Uncle Alistair meant by will, and thinking that means you're casting a spell to get something you want. And then your creative person says, oh dear, I think I'm going to be creative now. I need to write a poem about fairy cows.
Yeah. And
sit down and try, or sit and do all kinds of things to try to get there. But as soon as we're trying to get there, we're no longer going with the flow. We're no longer going with the flow. There's a natural Awen. It's within you.
It's really interesting hearing you speak, because I've listened to writers and they'll say, it requires dedication. So writers sit from 9 till 1 every day, and they aim to write 9,000 words a day, whatever it is, rubbish or not, just write it. But as you speak, it just strikes me as how grounded you are in yourself and in your sense of yourself, and that you're speaking from a great well of confidence and self-trust that whatever state you're in is the right one for you. So that opens yourself up to anything, whatever it is. And again, it's the process. You're not focused on the outcome, because then that allows anything to happen and to emerge. Am I right?
Oh, yes, absolutely. It's emergent. And I think that the world is full of simplistic mythic narratives, which are very seductive. Okay. And we know some of them because our lives are dominated by some people who are very driven by some of those simplistic mythic narratives, which they believe to be objective truths. But in fact, what we're looking at is complex systems. Okay. And the property of complex systems is that they're so complex that if you make a single input to that system, you don't know what's going to come out. It's not, superstition says, oh, why did that happen? It's because I didn't have my lucky pen, or it's because I drank too many pints yesterday. And we look for a simple answer to our question. But these are complex systems, which means that they're kind of like the weather, or like turbulence in water. Alan Garner, the writer, and in his latest book of last year, Treacle Walker. And there are two main characters. Treacle Walker is the old man, who's a kind of psychopomp, and the boy. And the old man keeps calling the boy whirligig. And by this he means that the boy is like a little vortex of water in the stream. And every day you could go back down to the stream, that little vortex of water will still be there in the stream. You say, hello, little vortex of water, how are you today? And the little whirligig goes blip, 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 at you. But in fact, hold on. Everyone listening knows what comes after that. Well, hold on. It's not a thing. Yeah? It's a kind of a process. It's some kind of dynamic revelation of patterns.
You can't pick it up.
If everything is that, then maybe we can hack it, maybe we can surf it, maybe we can be playful with it. I think the most. Oh well, yeah, and I think the more strictly we try to control it, the more harshly and strictly we try to control it and beat ourselves up. Guilt and shame are toxins, dear friends. Guilt and shame we all have them. We've all been educated to have them, conditioned to have guilt and shame. Guilt and shame are toxins. Let's get rid of them. Yeah. And then basically, to just kind of step out into a world where actually things are actually more complicated than we thought they were, and there isn't a simple reason why that happened. And we might never really know the answer to the question.
Can you see that? I know it could never happen now, but I'd love to see you in a debate with Terry Pratchett on any topic at all. I think it would solve the greatest enigmas of life and the universe.
Tell you what, I met Terry Pratchett a few times. If anyone here remembers Sean's Pagan Halloween Festival in London back in the day, Terry Pratchett used to come. Wow. He used to walk around looking at all us pagans selling our wares. I used to make borons. And drums out of found objects. And Terry Pratchett used to walk around the big pagan festival. Big sports hall full of stores, loads of workshops, all kinds of really interesting people walking around the place. Like Adrian Rook and people like that all walking around the place. Like being awesome. And he used to walk around. He looked kind of bemused, but you could see him taking notes. And you could also see in some of those books he knew quite a lot about pagans and witches.
He did.
A great man. I'm flattered. You should compare me to him. It would have been nice to have debated with him, but never mind.
He's one person I'd love to have met. I only discovered him in recent years. It was two OBOD members were arguing as to which I was, Granny Weatherwax or Nanny Og. And of course, I didn't know who the two witches were. Okay. I thought, I just love the idea of Granny Og with this magic, huge knickers as she goes to parties and taking sandwiches and cakes and storing them and then taking them out on the walk home for a bit of refreshment. The wildness of her, and then also the bit about, oh, Ferdia, you're so kind, the best of both. Rather than the worst. And I just love keeping, my witch's head, I wear it on the inside, and talking about headology, and I ain't dead. Just brilliant. So then I took to Terry Pratchett and became a convert. So And Nimi says that room must have been so filled with energy, the one with you and Terry Pratchett and Adrian.
Oh, well, loads of people. I don't know if Adrian was around then or not, actually, but lots of very interesting people around then. And that flowering of paganism in the late 80s and early 90s was really, really exciting. It was an exciting time, you know. But I kind of philosophically looked at it, and I watched some of my friends. And yeah, I did write a book, and I did do the odd workshop here and there, but they were all setting up their stalls. And everybody was saying, "Oh, I'm a traditional witch. My family have been doing it for generations." And I used to think, well, like, who are you trying to kid? You know, me or you? You know, like, as soon as they opened their mouths, you thought, oh dear, most of their ideas about paganism come from Robert Graves and James Fraser. You know, like, I can do better than that, you know. Honey, I can do better than that.
Will you, speaking of music,
play an instrument?
Yes.
Why not? Why not? I'll tell you what I'll do. I'll play my small pipes. Here they are. Oh, and I have to move back. Hold up a mo. I have to move back a bit so you can see them.
Where do these bagpipes come from? Are they Northern English or what are they?
Okay, so most people who are familiar with English bagpiping will know a little bit about how we have the famous Northumberland small pipe. The Northumberland small pipe is a bellows blown pipe, and it, like the Ilian Irish pipe,
the elbow,
and it's also a highly developed pipe. The sliders are metal, lots of valves, metal keys, etc. This is more rustic. Once upon a time, a rustic little wooden small pipe like this would have probably been a common sight in England, but not these days. This is actually based on an illustration in a book, an 18th century book by a German man called Pretorius, made by Sean Jones in Staffordshire. And so, strictly speaking, it's a German doody.
Okay.
One chanter and 3 drones. Anyway, first I plug up 2 of the drones. Right, I'm just going to do this. There we go. Right. That's the upper D drone. That's the lower D drone. That's the A drone. That was the Wild Hills of Wanney. It's a Northumbrian tune. This is a Northumbrian poem. The curve of the path, the light on the hillside, the pines upon the ridge against the sky, the rush of the wind and the sound that they make, the breath in my body as I climb, my song in the air, my hope, my fear, my muscles at work on the side of the hill, my memory of having been here before long ago, childhood like a flavour, sunlight early in the morning, daily miracle of millennia, blesses my passing to the wide open hilltop with moor scent sweet upon the wind. The view is as vast as my intention, to recognise that ancient mind, to reveal that world of adventure. And if you're open to the mystery, you never know what you'll find. Hills that are gathered like shadows, laid hard and grey against the sky, rounded by unthinkable time, speak of a depth which we do not remember. Hills are relatives. Fell sandstone, ruin of ancient mountains, bare flat platforms of stone, and back there in the prehistoric soul, a mangrove, someone's playing a trumpet on the riverbank. So I come all the way up from there, through 1,000 forests, some revisited underground, over fossilized ripples in the sand, revealed by a later generation of waves. Up through those old pine woods that lead from the sea cliffs to the hills, on paths beneath gorse and buckthorn, and winter bird swabs coiling like smoke in the sky. I can hear the ancestors sing the songs of life, living presences within the land. We dream of them and they of us. We say they have their ways, live closer to the root. They are leaving ghostly finger marks, visionary ripples, rings and cups. They slowly pecked out the forms of the mystery waiting to be revealed. Circles and spirals of song, like fruit on the branches of a tree. Constellations of stony pits covered by lichens and leaves, messages from long ago. And my own fingers have found them. My wonder is a deep stone well. I need no explanation of their art, for it is art, maybe the highest art of all. Perfection in a moment of knowing, the oneness of the ancient and the young, the imminence of the wave that carries us all along, patterns, a stone, a hill, a tree, a human hand. Northumberland.
Wow. Mari says, truly lovely to have this chat running alongside my evening here. As you play beautifully, I'm from Germany, but I haven't heard of this instrument. That's Franz of Fia.
I had to tear off the headphones. Because I was getting weird squeaky noises, and it was starting to. It's weird how playing the bagpipes is a bizarre balance of forces, and the squeaky noises in the headphones were like starting to affect the instrument. I don't even know how that works.
Well,
never mind.
Just let me read some comments for you. This is amazing.
Thank you.
I feel like the poem interprets the music. The impact of the music on the soul is overlapped and emphasized by the words, spreading through one's consciousness. Wow. That's from Philosophical Phoenix. Taimi, who's in Finland, says, such impressive words and a beautiful melody. Thank you so much, Barry. Gemma, who's in Douth, actually in County Meath. Thanks for a hugely entertaining and enlightening chat tonight. Wonderful to hear the Northumbrian pipes. Your talents are mind-blowing. Mille buíochas, which means 1,000 thanks. Oscailge. Barry, your words are so vivid. I felt I was right on the hillside by your side. That's from Nimi. Gabriella. Beautiful energy coming through the poem. Sean Clancy, he's the one who wondered if you could have a debate with Terry Pratchett. Oh, wow. You're just a fountain of Awen. Captivating. This is what Celine says. That is wow. Blown away this evening. Thank you. That's Natasha. Wunderschön. That's the German one. As if we feel the authentic vibe of each word. Could hear in the music in the words. Thank you. Just brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So loads of applauses as well. Wow. Thank you so much. So it's just, it amazes me, your energy. You're filling my room here. You're obviously filling your own room. And I think you're filling the room of everybody who's watching. The power. And, you come from a place of incredible inner strength that comes through your words. You don't hesitate. It's almost like from a well of wisdom. It is just amazing just to hear you, and just a joy.
When I first started performing, which was almost by accident, I was on Deptford High Street on Saturday night, and I was part of a kind of alternative music and entertainment scene, and we did things in pubs. And there's an old song, Deptford Fun City on a Saturday night, and this pub was full, packed with people drinking and talking. And then one of my friends hadn't shown up to do whatever their act was, and they said, Barry, will you do something? And I said, well, I've been writing this bit of poetry I've just happened to have in my bag. I'll read a bit of poetry if you want. I said, yeah, all right, great, thank you. And then everyone was drinking and talking, right? It was alternative cabaret. What the heck am I going to be doing reading poetry about Northumberland in here? Okay, never mind. Because that's what it was about. And with geology in it. And then someone said, Barry, are you nervous? And I said, no, I teach maths to 14-year-old girls.
Okay.
which I did at the time. And as far as I was concerned, even if they'd booed me out of the place, that would have been nothing. That would have had no comparison to trying to teach maths to 14-year-old girls in Thamesmead, right? And I think that I discovered my Awen, that performance is important to me, and if I fill your space, then I do so as an act of service and in a humble way, and I'm not trying to do that.
Yeah.
All I'm actually trying to do is communicate whatever wants to come out right now.
And you do it with a passion and it is just amazing, and a power. Gabriella, I met Barry at the summer gathering. We were in the same storytelling group. He's super expressive. It took me a while to understand. He feels and transmits intensively the energy of each word. And Ferdiet, who's also a teacher, there is no crowd so hostile. Barry is clearly both a bard and a warrior.
You should have seen it, mate. I always say the 5 years I was a young teacher made a man of me and taught me to have a sense of humour. But I said, I'm not going to do this the rest of my life.
Yeah, give up your sword after a while. Timey says, Barry, you're such an inspired, refreshing bard, a breath of fresh air. So it's just lovely to. So yeah. And Ferdy says, my first job as a maths teacher was in Stockwell. I don't know where. Okay, that is you. Nimi says, you communicate most wonderfully. The Awen claimed you. And now Sean, again, who wanted you to talk to Terry, Barry's becoming more and more my ultimate hero with each word.
I assure you, mate, I'm nobody's ultimate hero. And I'll tell you what as well, though, right? Ladies and gentlemen, all the stories in the world are not just reiterations of the same story. And Joseph Campbell can kiss my ass. And Kurt Vonnegut rules. In fact, Kurt, if you look for it, it's probably still out there on the net. Kurt Vonnegut wrote an essay about the different structures of different kinds of stories. So he took the hero's journey with its challenge and its crisis and all its bits and its resolution, and he kind of mapped it out. And then he said, but there are all kinds of other stories. And then he described a lot. And then there was someone else made a really good infographic story graphs. Like intensity or something like that. And there's a really interesting infographic. It shows all these different kinds of stories as kind of like as patterns. And yeah, so then being a hero, like, well, I'm flattered, but we don't need heroes. We need bards, don't we?
Yes, no, absolutely.
And ovids and druids.
Yeah, exactly. Pat says, I just love the voice. She means yours. It's been ages since I heard someone properly declaim in a way that could fill a mead hall. But that's the work of a bard.
Look at that. Pat has found the maps of the universal ships of our favourite stories. Look. Oh, look at that as well. Our thesis got rejected. Arg! Just shows, doesn't it? Eh? Just shows, doesn't it?
Okay. All right. So the Owen adopted Barry. Okay. Owen has claimed you.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah.
Okay.
And it's also, sorry, there was one time I went to assembly, I think, then, and they asked me to give a talk on Owen. And I said, we can think of Owen in lots of different ways. I could think of it as my own creative potentiality, and thinking along the lines of the way Blake, for instance, wrote about human creativity. His idea of Christ almost was the kind of like the kind of perfected human was completely loving and incredibly creative.
Mm-hmm.
That God himself, even though he used those old-fashioned terms, was in fact a kind of creative impulse. Or we could think of it as an energy that flows.
Yeah.
From A to B, and inspiration in a more traditional kind of way. But there's something else you could do too. You could take from the Shaivite kind of teachings from Bengal.
Okay.
Well, the goddess Shakti.
Okay.
She is literally an embodiment of the energy of inspiration. She's the energy of inspiration. So you could even also, if you wanted to, hey, all you experimental magicians who like kind of making it up as you go along and, like playing around with the game rules of reality, why not? Why shouldn't Owen be a goddess or a god or, or a non-gendered, non-binary being of some kind that you could call upon and invoke? And I have done this and I recommend it. And what I also recommend is something that we've done at some of the gatherings, and that is sing Owen. Sing Owen 100 times.
Yeah,
sing Owen for an hour. Yeah. Sing Owen for an hour. And you don't have to just go in one long breath the whole time. You can be playful and expressive. Sing Owen for an hour and see what happens.
Wiccan says, I'm sure I'm blood type Owen. At least I think that's what they meant, since they said I was a universal donor.
That's so Ricky. I think Owen adopted him too,
That's great. Anna says, don't bards assist in triggering the hero's self-development?
Well, of course. Of course they do. Within that particular story. I was just sort of like making one of my little bugbears is that for a lot of people that's the only story. And if you take a complex piece of ancient or medieval literature and impose your own graph upon it, to look at it through your eyes, maybe we should try to imagine what it meant to them. When I was a young man, I had a really interesting moment of revelation. I used to write all those books that a lot of people still go for about ancient astronauts. Erich von Däniken and all that stuff, which I don't credit really these days at all. No time for most of that stuff these days. But one day I was in this book, one of those books, and I was looking at a photo of a famous Mayan bas relief, right?
Okay.
Which they said was an astronaut at the control panel of his spacecraft, right? And it kind of looked like that. And then suddenly, Barry, aged, I don't know how old, 15 or whatever, I suddenly looked at it and I thought, hold on a minute. That's what we see. What did they see? Right? What did they see? How did they understand this? And the more I looked at it, and the more I thought, this isn't what he says at all. what did it mean to them?
Mm-hmm.
An interesting one you see on Facebook all the time are these ancient Sumerian clay tablets and such like, which show these beings walking around with handbags, handbags. And the New Agers and people like that love this stuff. And they're always going on, but they always show pictures of these guys where they think they think the aliens took them shopping to Macy's or something, right? I don't know. But in fact, if you bother to actually read about this stuff, they're buckets. And they're buckets that they are using to carry water, to water the sacred trees.
Okay.
Now, that's a lot more Druidic than going shopping with aliens, isn't it?
I would think so. Absolutely. Speaking of, Pat has instructions for the hero of a fairy tale by Neil Gaiman. Anyway, it's there for instructions that might help anyone on a hero, on a heroic journey. Celine says, performing is as an act of service. This is the way performing should be. It's been hijacked, though, for obvious reasons. Barry is a real original person. Usually I don't like them, but Barry is honest.
I'm doing my best, to be honest.
Yeah.
Right. So one of my most important teacher in this life was an old Tibetan Lama called Chogyal Namkhai Nobu. And his pith instructions to me were, relax, don't worry, and do your best. Which doesn't sound very esoteric, but that can be as esoteric as you want it to be. Coming from a man like that.
Well, it's about staying in the stillness. It's about moving when you need to. I think that can be, hugely profound.
Yeah, but anyhow, that's how it goes.
So, Barry, what's the most reckless thing you've ever done?
Don't know. Oh, okay. Well, I suppose one very reckless thing I did was I was a young teacher with a nice career ahead of me.
I thought you were going to answer
that. I had all my colleagues saying, "Oh yes, Barry, get yourself a nice promotion, mate. You could be head of department, and then you can buy a house and have a mortgage, and then you can get a car, right?" And I just kind of sit in the staff room looking at them and like how happy and fulfilled they were. And these were in the Thatcher days when everyone was saying, "Oh, you must get a mortgage. It's such a good investment," and all this bollocks. And I said, "No, thanks, guys. I'm out of here." And my going away speech in the staff room, people were going white with horror. So that was quite rash. I was surprised. My parents actually were very supportive. I was surprised that I thought my parents would go, "You what? You're gonna what? You're gonna what?" And you know. But I said to them,
you gave it up.
Yeah, well, I said to them, I've still got that experience and those qualifications if I need them,
I thought you were going to say that your reckless thing was teaching 14-year-olds. That's what Freddie is.
No, that was the safe option.
Indeed. So leaving the pensionable job was the reckless thing. So when you left teaching, what did that free you up to do?
First of all, it freed me up to take ownership. No, that might be not the right word. To ground myself in a way I hadn't been grounded before.
Uh-huh.
I had a lot of friends who worked in the arts. I had a lot of friends who were musicians, ceramicists, and they weren't like your nice middle-class musicians and ceramicists sitting in their little studios, with all the right contacts doing their exhibitions and gigs all over the country type of people. They were all poor as church mice and they were all on benefits.
Yeah.
But they chose to live that way and they thought, well, I'm contributing to society because I'm actually a creative person. And I thought, well, I ain't going to do what they're doing, but I had a nice cheap flat to live in. I'm a resourceful, intelligent person. I'm not going to starve to death and find myself being homeless. I've got a little bit of money I've saved in the bank. Mm-hmm. I can do what the hell I want. In fact, I told the headmaster of the school, well, I've got enough money to go around the world, but I'm not going to do that. I'm going to have a different kind of an adventure. And then he went and told everyone I was going to go around the world. Never mind. Anyhow, so then basically there was a thing called the Enterprise Allowance Scheme. So you got a little bit, I got a better set of benefits from the state if I started a small business. So I did that. I became for a short period, I was completely independent, completely self-determining, self-organizing. I found a lock-up garage to use as a workshop. I was literally a garage with one of those folding up doors. And back of some houses in Brockley. And I started printing Pictish, interlocking Pictish spirals onto T-shirts and making drums. I made this boron in 1991.
Wow. So what started you with the baron and then ultimately making barons? Where did that, do you come from a musical family or?
No, not really. No, I was always interested in music. My parents told me even when I was too little for me to remember, I was interested in music.
Okay.
But no, what happened was, I think, one, I saw Christy Moore come out and do an encore. And he came out in his vest with a towel over his shoulder to mop the sweat off his brow.
Yes.
In Brixton somewhere, in a small smoke-filled concert venue. And then he started playing the boron and doing that thing that he did, you know. And I thought, what is that? I like it. And then that New Year's Eve, an Irish friend was round in our flat for New Year's Eve and he had one. He was showing me how you did it. I couldn't do it at all. I thought, wow, that's harder than it looks. And then when the pagan thing started to take off, I was hanging out with a whole load of people and they were buying these cheap borons from Hobgoblin Music and using them for shamanic type stuff by going. You know? And so I thought, I can do that. So I got one. And then I got into it and I got more and more into it. And then I played it every day. And then I met people who played it really well. And then I decided I would decorate my drum. And I discovered the best way of decorating these skins isn't paint or acrylic, which makes a skin, but it's actually coloured Indian inks. So I decorated my drum. And it was very nice. It worked well. So then someone said, will you do mine? And then I decorated a few people's drums for a bit of cash. And then one of the big Halloween festivals were coming up. Mm-hmm. So I bought a whole job lot. I bought a whole job lot of framed drums from somewhere and decorated, put nice Celtic borders around them. And by then I was using offcuts. Of skin and found objects. That's a frame. That's a frame that I found in a marketplace. And I started making these things. And then there was a well-known pagan artist around those days, a fantastic sculptor. Some folks might remember him, called Bel Buka. He carved in wood beautiful goddesses and horned gods. He's a genius. Died young. I didn't know him very well, but whenever I met him, he always said something to me that just like, oh, yeah. And I had already had a couple of interesting meetings with this guy and a couple of little adventures where he had been involved. And there was always something kind of transformative whenever I met this person. He must have really had something going on there. And then when he saw the drums that I had been decorating and I had bought them, and he said, in my commune, we used to make them out of old sieves and leather jackets. And of course, you can't really make a boron out of a leather jacket, ladies, gentlemen, and people who are neither ladies nor gentlemen, but are equally welcome. But I gave me the idea and I did some research, and then I discovered I could go in a local builder's merchant and buy half a dozen wooden sieves, which I started doing 2 or 3 times a year. And whenever I walked in the builders merchants, they would laugh. And there were all the builders and the builders merchants and the man behind the counter would say, It's the sieve, man! I buy all these wooden sieves and I take them apart. And then I discovered this place in Newport Pagnell that sold really, really, really good quality goat skin. And started making them. And I did that for some years until the Baron went out of favour and the djembe of doom became the drum of choice. And also I moved away from London and my marketplace disappeared. And I thought, well, you know what? It's become an expensive hobby. And there's an old famous Tibetan saying from one of the old Tibetan guys, just because I know how to make beer doesn't mean that I will make beer.
Mm-hmm.
So I thought, I don't have to be doing this. Sets me free to do something else now. So when I quit teaching, I had loads of these little things. I had lots of things going on. And I got a job with London Wildlife Trust.
Oh.
Helping to look after one of their nature reserves. And then after that, I got a job in the Natural History Museum in Kensington as one of their explainers. And these were nice little part-time jobs that gave me loads of freedom. And I've never had a full-time, I've not been in full-time employment or had a 9-to-5 job since 1988. Wow. And I've survived. I've been very lucky. Right now, my aunt, bless her heart, she owns the house. She pays most of the bills. And the small amount of money I earn goes in the kitty sometimes, depending on how many gigs I had. Okay. But I'm the house husband and urban peasant, right? Okay. In fact, we often laugh about the role reversals thing. Such and such a person is going to come round. Barry, oh no, I better vacuum the floor. So then in the division of labour, we kind of just switched round. So then I do everything, unless Anne wants to. If she wants to cook, she can cook. But otherwise, I just do everything. And we've got a large allotment where I grow food. That stops me going stir crazy, being stuck in the house. And we've got 3.5 acres of naturalised ash coppice in mid Warwickshire, which is our wood supply.
Okay.
And so I'm the urban peasant, baby. Intelligent and keen. Know what I mean. I'm the urban peasant, baby. Here's the twist. I really do exist, I think.
Lovely.
You know what I mean?
Ricky thought you were going to say that you had a job at the Natural History Museum as one of their exhibits.
I was actually one of their exhibits some of the time. Yeah, it's true. I was actually. That's how I started doing the Green Man thing. You know about the Green Man thing, of course, don't you?
Tell us a bit about it. Tell our viewers.
Oh, look, here we are. Hold on a sec. I'm trying to find a picture I can hold up to show you. It's a black and white picture. Look here. It's a black and white picture, I'm afraid, on a calendar. But anyway, look, there you are. See, I paint myself green, and I dress up in these green things, and then I make a leafy crown out of ivy, and I travel around the country. Promoting Britain's woods, trees, wildlife, and history. That's the Green Man. And that's how I started doing that in the Natural History Museum. And the bosses said, "Oh, we like that," So then, occasionally there would be a kind of, I don't know, there'd be a funny little picture, like children are dancing around the tree and being independent. The children are dancing around the tree, and then there's this funny thing sitting in the tree going, or banging a drum or something. And it says, the Natural History Museum's official Green Man. Oh. And then my boss said to me, "Barry, I know you've seen this," holding up this thing in the paper. "You are never, ever, ever to tell people that you are the Natural History Museum's official Green Man. Do you understand?" And I said, "Yeah, I understand. I get it."
Oh, and you haven't told anyone, of course. So Gabriella says, "I feel a tad eerie about the Green Man. Could Barry perhaps describe it and make the eeriness go away?"
Well, you should feel a tad eerie about the Green Man. Where do you start? The oldest Green Man in the world is an Indian temple guardian called Kritimukha. And Kritimukha isn't really a man, it's a kind of pussycat, only with little horns. and leaves and branches coming out of their mouth, and sometimes flowers and fruits, little birds flying around. It's very decorative. And that's spread from there to Tibet, where they call him Zipa. And it was also found in one or two ancient temples in the Near East, have been shown to have leafy men's heads. Then the Romans thought it was cool. So they used leafy men's heads as a decorative motif. Sometimes Poseidon is depicted that way.
Okay.
Even though he's well, Poseidon isn't just a god of the sea. He's also an earth god. He's a kind of chthonic god, as it were. Remember, Poseidon causes earthquakes.
Oh, yes. Okay.
Anyhow, and then Bacchus, of course, leaves, yes. Right? And then from the this is the official art history version, because I go with the official art history version, and Professor Ronald Hutton too, basically. And in fact, speaking of Professor Hutton, if you want to know about the Green Man, people, if you want detail about the Green Man and the things I'm about to talk about, there's an excellent Gresham College lecture in which he talks about it. And all Ronald's Gresham College lectures about prehistoric religion and all that are all on YouTube, and they're absolutely brilliant. But anyhow, this decorative motif, which everyone seems to have liked, but nobody had a name for, spread into the cathedral and church building wave of the kind of round about the 10th, 11th century. We've got a 13th century manuscript describing a French cathedral. And it says, this cathedral contains lots of those leafy men's heads that people seem to like, or words to that effect. So they didn't know what to call him. In the 13th century, they didn't have a name for him, right? Okay. Why do we call him the Green Man, you might say? Well, his leaves are green, it's obvious. Well, no. In the 1930s, those Edwardians, they have so much to answer for. In the 1930s, Lady Raglan of the Folklore Society wrote a book called The Mystery of the Green Man, or something like that. And in that book, she didn't know what to call him, so she named him after the pub. And Green Man was a very common pub and place name for a variety of reasons. Some of it may have been to do with gin. Never mind that. So she called him the Green Man. So calling a leafy man's head. Right, look, let's get one. That's quite a good one. Calling something like that, the Green Man, comes from Lady Raglan, right? Talking to the vicar. The vicar says, well, I don't know anything about it, mate. It's a bit strange, isn't it? Nothing to do with me, right? And Lady Raglan, not knowing what to call him, named him after the pub.
Okay.
And so but then what happens next is, of course, the pagan revival of the mid-20th century, right? We've got the great and the good, yeah, creating their traditions, you know. So we've got I get all their names mixed up, you know, like Doreen and Gerald, and we've got Newin, right? And for them, all that Edwardian stuff, all the Edwardian romanticism about Merry England, right? That stuff was perfect for them, because they didn't want to just import a whole load of classical stuff, although some of them did, of course. But they wanted to make it at least seem native. And so they had all this material from these folklore collectors. But unfortunately, all the folklore collectors were all collecting their folklore with a kind of agenda that they felt guilty about all the traditional societies that they had destroyed in the empire around the world. And so they actually, what they suddenly realized, oh no, and we even destroyed our own heritage. And so here we are in Africa or India or wherever, destroying people's heritage. And we already did it to ourselves, you see. And so now what happens is that each different period in history has a different Green Man, if you ask me. And now we have the modern Green Man. I call him our Green Man, because he's ours, because we have claimed him now. When people see me paint green with leaves on my head, an awful lot of them know what I represent, right? And I ain't going to naysay that. I'm going to say, yeah, historically speaking, this is not an ancient god that the Masons were secretly worshipping and snuck in. Great story, but not really very likely at all. However, we ourselves are in the unique situation of creating tradition, right? And in fact, our tradition, and particularly Druidry is the most creative of the different branches on the pagan tree. Within Druidry, we're constantly creating, we're constantly creating ritual. We're constantly creating our own symbols, our own songs, and finding our own personal ways of connecting with deity, divinity, and the sacred. And because we're free to do that. And so what we call the Green Man, our Green Man, is a perfect opportunity for us to connect with our heritage in the wildwood, and our historical heritage too, as a people. And so there you go. And he is a bit eerie. When I do my show, I'll give you a little bit what I do on my show. I say sometimes he looks really, really fierce, like a wildwood spirit going woo, right? The original bogeyman, right colour for that too. And then sometimes he looks really proud. There's a really nasty one. The only really nasty one is in Norwich Cathedral, and he looks really proud, And sometimes he looks surprised. One of my favourites in Coventry, in Holy Trinity Church, Coventry's like that. I call him Green Man on a motorbike because he looks like he's being blown by the wind. And sometimes he looks like he's in pain, right? And so it could be. Ronald will often tell you it's a visual aid, and these people are all being punished in purgatory. He might sometimes tell you that. He doesn't always tell you that, but he might tell you that. And it's possible that that's how many people interpreted it. Okay. It's not clear that that's what was intended. He's our Green Man. He's the spirit of the woods. He's the wild man of the woods. He's the guardian of the forest. He's someone we all need to have a chat with. And in fact, I'm not a pagan priest. I avoid titles. Some people have called me a shaman in the past. Well, if they want to call me things, they're welcome to call me what they want. But I don't call myself anything. I suppose I call myself a bard. But I see it as a kind of ministry. I don't really do the Green Man at pagan events. Why should I? I go and sit underneath my tree playing the bagpipe, and they all come by in their white jeans and pink trainers, right, with their footballs and their inflatable hammers, right? No, I'm saying, out of their air-conditioned houses and their great big giant cars, say, you look funny, they're the ones I want to talk to.
Yeah.
They're the ones I want to talk to. And then just by meeting me and talking to me, their world becomes a bigger place. And that's not some kind of hubris on my part. Yeah. People respond to me in all kinds of different ways. And and this weekend I will be at Elverston Castle in Derbyshire. It's the Derbyshire County Council Wood Fair. Okay. And I must have been doing that event for about 20 years now. It's a lovely weekend event. Many of the exhibits.
You be Green Manning?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. I'll be sitting in my little spot in the corner of the woods, playing music, singing songs, telling stories, and waving my twigs. I always have twigs from lots of different trees. It's a great way of talking to families with children. Yeah. I said, do you know what kind of tree this comes from? And they go, and it's really funny. There's that famous thing of the word acorn isn't in the school dictionary anymore. Well, guess what? If I hold up a twig from an oak tree at this time of year, and I say, do you know what kind of tree this comes from? They say, acorn! They know what an acorn is, but they don't know what an oak tree is. It's interesting, isn't it?
Wow. And
the basic general knowledge and basic natural history isn't so great in 7 to 11-year-olds right now. And so they get a whole lot of natural history, general knowledge.
Yeah.
In my shows. And I don't tell traditional stories because traditional stories won't communicate. Yeah. Won't communicate what I want to say.
Okay.
And so all my stories are my own stories. In fact, if you go to my webpage,
what is it?
Dun, 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 dun. Oh look! There are some business cards.
Lovely.
Lots of really good photographers. Right. Oh, there you are. Look, if I hold that up there like that, you can. Oh, it's mirror imaged.
If you can read it out to me, I'm going to type it in the chat here.
Can I type it in the chat? Oh yeah, join the chat.
Can you type it in?
Oh, on a sec. Oh, blimey. No, I don't want to do it. I have to sign in and everything. You do it. It's just all lowercase.
Yeah.
Songandstory.co.uk.
Songandstory.co.uk. Songandstory.co.uk. Okay, let's see where that go.
That's it. Yeah. So you can see what I'm doing there, really, you know. And then if you look on Facebook, I'm the Wild Man of the Woods. If you put Wild Man of the Woods, it doesn't work. You have to put the Wild Man of the Woods, and then you'll find me on Facebook. And I always put my next shows, and I meet loads of photographers, so I have great photos. I always put up a good photo, you know. Anyway, Elveston Castle this weekend, near Derby. It's the Derbyshire County Council Wood Fair. There are loads of exhibitors. There's traditional crafts of all kinds. There are Vikings. There's me. They often have heavy horses pulling logs around and all kinds of stuff going on. It's a fantastic show. And I see that I saw somewhere somebody was saying, Gabriella was said, we should talk about what should we talk to him about and what should we ask or say? Well, I think you have to, if you're having dealings with these kinds of beings, it has to come from the heart. You know, it has to come from the heart. It has to be as honest and honorable, open-hearted and straightforward as you can possibly be. And I think I'm possibly alive today and talking to you about this stuff because once upon a time, long ago, I feel emotional, I stood in a very, very strange, very special place and spoke very deeply from my heart, right? And was answered.
Oh.
You know? So really, you know, no one can tell you what to ask. You know, if you want to meet the Green Man, well, I think the Green Man is there. And it you know, like, the Jethro Tull song has nothing whatsoever to do with English folk heritage, but it's a lovely song. And he says, Jack, do you never sleep? Does the green stay alive deep in your heart? And with these changing times, motorways, power lines, will they keep us apart? Oh, no. Well, I don't think so. I saw some grass growing through the pavement today. And I coined a word to describe him. Virid. V-I-R-I-D. Virid. Our Green Man is virid. So there you go.
So, how about some Baron?
All right, sure, can do. Oh, look, I've got a nice poem I can do with the Baron here.
Perfect.
As I said, I made this drum in 1991. I tend to play mostly one-handed. I got a couple of good gigs because of that with some of the people who are fussy once upon a time. Okay. This is Winter Night Battles. Dark as a parliament of rooks in a November field. Hardly seen in the gloom, antlers raised in anger or celebration. These hoary creatures never yield to winter winds. No bend, no sway, but stand firm against the blast, raising their shaggy heads into the storm. waving their limbs about in battle rage, gesturing at the river of clouds that pours overhead, curtains of night decked out around the fight soon to be staged. And who will live, and who will die, and who will be still standing by the morning's light? Who, torn apart or finally sent to fall by the wild roaring host that passes here out of sight, hurt and fell by all? Who are these stout-hearted, worn-out warriors of the night, strong of arm and clad in armour so deep-grooved, who dare to face the elements so proud of sight, raising up from the shadows ahead of us on the hill unmoved, ancestral guardians of the land, spurned by many with their glib don't cares, as hard and as soft as the earth from which they sprang, forged and beaten by the force of countless years, fed by deep-rooted springs from which clear waters ran for centuries before we paved them up with stone. They do not care, nor do they fear machine-ridden man. They are heavy, shadowed, aging fighters, everyone. The oaks of the Forest of Arden, standing firm with their clan. The oaks of the Forest of Arden, standing firm with their clan.
Wow, wow, wow. Beautiful, beautiful. Oh, listen, that has been just amazing. Gabriella says, thank you very much. The Green Man talk has been enchanting. I will be re-listening to it many times more. Philosophical says, dear gods, the energy of this. I can't stay still.
That's what we want.
That's just beautiful. And she says, no, I would love hours of this. What an energy and enthusiasm Barry has. Such an uplifting chat. That's from Karen. Fantastic. Fabulous.
Well, if you want to hear some more, I did an interview with Dave the Bard in February on Druidcast.
Yeah.
And I've been very careful this evening not to just go over the same stories and things that I did with Dave. And then also, if you go back and hit time through Druidcast, you'll probably find some performances from the assemblies.
Yes, you do.
In Dave's playlists.
Yes.
And then, so you saw the address for the Green Man, but if you want an address for my kind of non-Green Man poetical works,
yes,
that is all lowercase.
Yeah.
You have to put the www on the front of this one.
Yeah.
Red Sandstone Hill. That's all one word. redsandstonehill.net. I haven't been as busy. I've had lots of other things going on. I haven't been putting as much of my work online. That's the one, Philip. Thank you. Look at that.
And then Pat says, it's, what is it? Sean has said, thank you so much. This is a chat I'll be watching back over and over again. Pat says, yes, this is definitely one to listen to again. So,
thank you, everybody. I'm pleased. You know, and thank you, Eimear. You know, for the honour and the privilege of sitting by your fire with you this evening.
I'm so delighted that you consented to come. And Philippa says it's been so enjoyable, powerful, and entertaining. And I have found that too. And it's interesting when I've said this to many of my guests is that, okay, I've spoken to you on and off over the years, but not very much. I've bought your poetry from you, but I don't know you. And then now I'm having a chat with you, and I selfishly get to know people better by having these chats. And it's like we're in a sitting room, and yet this is being broadcast to what my daughter used to call the whole wild world. And it just fascinates me, this process. And it's just been a joy. And Jamie says, well, I've been pretty sick with a very bad cold, but I'm smiling and I've showed up. Maybe I can dance a bit later. Well, I hope you can, Jamie. And he says, definitely reruns are in order. Absolutely. So we're coming to the end of our time. And usually I ask two questions. What is your favorite time of the year, your favorite season of the year? And what is your favorite ceremony of the Wheel of the Year to celebrate?
Okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go with the first thing that pops out of my mouth, and this is my favourite time of year, and my favourite seasonal celebration is Samhain.
Well, Gabriella would be very pleased because she generally bets on what my guests and her guest rate isn't usually good, but oh God, she's got it today. Samhain, brilliant.
But I love them all. In fact, if we'd had this conversation in April, I might well have said Beltane, And you've got to be where you are. I mean, at heart, I'm a bit of a phenomenologist.
Yes.
Being with what's there.
That's right.
Being with what's there, with what's happening now,
Funny, I don't have a favourite one, and yet I like the one I'm in, which also means I don't have one that I don't like. I never say, oh God, now we're coming up to. I enjoy all of them. And before I end, I'm grateful to the gods. Thank you. That's Living Oregon for you. Nimi, contagious life force, power, energy, inspiring. So people have really, really enjoyed your chat. And thank you from the US. It's an absolute joy talking to you. So I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart, Barry.
You too. Thank you.
And Timey says, indeed, it feels truly like sitting together, exchanging all kinds of interesting, fascinating things. Absolutely. Many thanks for a powerful chat. So, and it has been. And I had no idea we were going to be talking about the Green Man. It's just wonderful how organic our conversations can be. And it's such a joy. So Barry has been raw and fresh in the kindest, brightest way.
Good. Well, no one said passionate, because they often use that. I get kind of like a cliche is in the mind of the beholder, but oh no, they're going to tell me I'm passionate again, are they? Like
now you're raw and fresh. Wonderful, rejuvenating. So there you are. So
thank you.
Don't mention the P word, anybody. Okay. So, and Ricky, Feral, isn't that lovely? Very perceptive, Ricky. So, how comforting there are people like Barry and Eimear and the other ones are there in the world. Thank you, Celine. That's really nice to say that. That is really, really nice.
Yes, that is very nice to say. I can remember on one occasion, I heard a sound recording of some old guy singing in a cave somewhere. And I thought, the world is a better place because that old guy is sitting in his cave singing. So if I can be that for someone, then that's a truly awesome privilege and responsibility, isn't it?
Well, just as you say that, Silverbranch says, been listening in the background. You inspired me as a bard to come from the heart. Thanks, Barry. So I'm going to ask you, just let you say goodnight to everybody, and then I'll send you to the green room and I'll just finish up and then we can have a little chat.
You bet. You got it. Yeah. Thank you, everybody. Thank you very much indeed. It's been lovely here with you. Thank you for your kind comments. If I could provide some entertainment, if I can provide some entertainment and inspiration in these difficult times, I'm pleased, proud, and very, very happy to serve you.
Brilliant. So I'll chat to you in 2 ticks. Well, wasn't that a wonderful conversation we had? And it's just lovely. The world is better when people do their thing and feel happy and peaceful. I couldn't agree with you more, Gabriella. Nimi, this evening has been so powerful. I could listen to Barry forever. Absolutely. And Declan, it's so nice to hear stories before bed. That is just wonderful. So I thank you all again for joining me and for this wonderful chat and for your comments. And I know there were some long comments that we didn't get to deal with because I couldn't read them. But I look forward to seeing you next week for another chat. I'll have another interesting guest next week. So until then, Slán go Fóill, we will be having our online equinox, autumn equinox, Connacht on Or, as we say in Ireland, Alban Elfed celebration on the 23rd at 7 p.m. UK time here on this platform as well. So I look forward to seeing you for a chat next week. In the meantime, have a good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or whether you're watching a recording of this conversation. Until we meet again, Slán go Fóill.